Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am excited but also kind of nervous about this video I'm going to be filming today. So this video is going to be about the novel that I actually wrote when I was around 12 years old, 12, and I think I finished it around 13, something like that. This is an actual full novel. I mean, it is like, let me see, like 200 some pages, I think. It is 278 pages, single spaced. I'm not joking, it is single spaced. I can't believe to this day that I actually wrote this book in its entirety. It is something that I'm proud of because that is quite an accomplishment, especially for someone so young, but I wouldn't call it exactly a good book. I mean, obviously I'm probably harder on myself because it is me, but I was 12 when I wrote it, so I would try to give myself a lot of leeway there. And again, it is a pretty cool accomplishment to have written something like that when I was 12. So basically in this video, I'll just be kind of reading over some of the passages I wrote. I'll also tell you what the story is about, and I'll just kind of give my overall thoughts on this book. Yeah, it is really crazy to look at it in its entirety right here on my computer, and see some of the writing and some of the dialogue and the characters and everything, and just kind of inwardly cringe at my 12-year-old writing style and my clear influence from things like Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Narnia definitely, just all of those books I loved when I was 12. And I mean, still love, but yeah, definitely seeing those influences there. But yes, without further ado, I will get right into it. So I haven't read this book in its entirety in a while, in years really, but I have read bits and pieces of it over time, and from what I remember, the story is about a young girl named Emma. She's 12, and she finds this magical artifact that basically gives her these ability to travel to this different world that she never knew existed, and that she is actually from originally, but she didn't know. Both of her parents are dead, or so she thinks they are, and she lives with her grandparents, who are, her grandmother's very strict, her grandfather is a little bit more lenient and laid back. She's closer with him, but they are overall pretty strict grandparents and have a pretty tight hold on her life. And she just, you know, wants adventure in the great wide somewhere, as Belle would say, and she is able to find that when she discovers this magical artifact, and also when a boy comes into her life, because of course that is all the rage with books still to this day, but definitely back in, oh god, probably 2008 was when I was writing this, 2009, that's when I would have been that age. So yeah, definitely that influence is in here. A boy changing her life, whatever, but he comes into her life mysteriously. She meets him in her world, and he convinces her to go with him back to his world because he says he's a prince and his family is being imprisoned by this evil power that wants to take over the world, and he needs her help because she is the only one that is able to hone the powers of this magical artifact, supposedly. So she agrees to travel with him, leaving just a simple note behind for her grandparents, as many children do in fantasy stories, and she travels with him to this world, and all sorts of chaos and magical happenings ensue. You know, saying it out loud, it actually doesn't sound like a bad story, to be honest. It actually sounds like something I would read today. You know, whether it would be middle grade probably, or YA or whatever. I actually really don't mind the concept. While a little bit basic, I think it, with some improvement and some adult writing skills, I think it could actually really be improved upon and be a pretty good story. So maybe I'll revisit this story and rewrite it, who knows. But for now it's sitting here in the way that it was. I will read the first paragraph to you, and wow, did I love adverbs at this age. I really peppered in the writing with those adverbs, so let's see what the first paragraph says. Stretching her arms out as wide as they would go, Emma dragged her feet lethargically into the kitchen. She suppressed a yawn as she sank into her seat at the table, her droopy, exhausted eyes not completely focused on the dull buzz of the morning happening around her. Gran was meticulously cooking bacon at the stove, and Gramps was no doubt in the living room, enjoying his daily cup of coffee while perusing the entertainment section of the newspaper. Emma Emma began scratching a finger angrily into the wooden table, digging deeper and deeper into the wood as if searching for buried treasure. But it wasn't long before Gran's all-seeing eyes were scrutinizing her, and she instantly took charge by smacking Emma's hand away. Her harsh slaps reminded Emma greatly of a spiked whip, smacking misbehaved animals. She most likely didn't want her ruining her precious new table. Wow, all the adverbs, meticulously, lethargically, what else did I say? Angrily, yeah, I really liked those adverbs. Really they're not needed at all, but at 12 I really felt that they were. I haven't read Harry Potter in a while, but doesn't J.K. Rowling really use a lot of adverbs? She was a really big inspiration for me at the time. Because I loved Harry Potter so much. Obviously this was far before anything about her came out and 2008. But yeah, I think she uses a lot of adverbs, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me correctly. So clearly I had that influence there. Oh boy, so here I have one of the paragraphs where I describe the boy. Clearly they are going to be love interests. It is clear from the beginning when I'm describing him. Oh god, this is so embarrassing. Okay, so I'm gonna read the description of this boy character. The boy, the mystery boy, was kneeling before her, his rosy cheeks remaining the only color on his face. He was staring directly at Emma, his green eyes as wide as a curious child's. His curly hair really was beautiful, his luscious curls perfectly spiraled. Sorry, I'm laughing because my boyfriend's in the kitchen cooking right now. I clearly had to type at 12 and still do because he has very curly hair, so, oh, this is so embarrassing. Alright. His curly hair really was beautiful, his luscious curls perfectly spiraled down to his ears, so perfect that Emma felt enchanted by it. But she cleared away all those thoughts, though it was difficult, and stared back at the boy before her. There they remained, the two of them gazing into each other's eyes thoughtfully, more adverbs, until the boy finally turned his face away. Emma felt awkward and focused her attention elsewhere, instantly realizing that the boy had pulled her out the nearby archway and under the blossoming tree. It all seemed so quick, she hadn't noticed. When she glanced back up, she noticed the boy positioning himself beside a prodigious backpack, which she assumed belonged to him. The boy was sitting across from her, under the tree as well, his legs crossed, his eyes still studying the grass. At last, he lifted his head and opened his mouth to speak. "Don't be alarmed," he said in a soothing voice. He gently lifted Emma off the grassy ground and seemed to carry her as far as the sky into the clouds. "I do not bring you danger." Oh wow, like I said, little embarrassing the way I described that character, but you know, what do you expect from a 12-year-old girl reading a lot of YA fantasy and all of that in 2008. This was also the time of Twilight being big, and I also really liked Twilight, so there you go. I also seem to have a lot of info dumping here. I have a lot of like flashback sequences through the boy character. By the way, his name is Raisin. I don't even know if that's a real name. It sounds like Raisin. I hate it now, but I think I made it up. But anyway, Raisin tells her a lot of these stories and world building information through flashbacks and storytelling and things like that, which I think can, when done well and in a certain way, I think it can work, but I don't think it was done very well here. So yeah, there's that. Alright, so here in chapter 10, they finally go to this other world, or travel to this other world. So I'm going to read the description of traveling to the other world. Emma felt as though her knees were crumbling into tiny little pieces and the world around her was dissolving into nothingness. Everything around her blurred and vanished before her eyes. The house, the dozens of trees surrounding her, and even Raisin, though she could still feel his cool hands gripping hers. This is too much, she thought. What was happening? Emma tried to contain herself, but it was very difficult when she was being whisked away into time and space. She hardly had any idea of what was going on with her until she suddenly remembered that the grain was sucking her into another dimension, away from her own world and into another. Things like this only happened in her fantasy novels. Maybe this is all a fantasy. Emma couldn't help thinking as her knees began to grow weaker by the second. Maybe this is all some crazy dream, and I'm not even here right now. I'm in bed waiting to wake up. Maybe I never even met Raisin. Maybe this is the night before the wedding. But Emma couldn't help feeling both terrified and delighted as she found everything around her blurry, and finally disappearing to be replaced with a bright, light light. It reminded Emma of the Anita story and how she had struck the boy with a bright, blinding light just like this one. Emma wanted to shield her eyes, but remembered that she had to keep her hands interlocked with Grayson's. Then she gasped because she realized her eyes were open. The air around her that had suddenly blown in was mucky and practically a mist of heat. Emma felt her face squish and make a face. What is that sentence? She despised the heat. She preferred cool, breezy weather, just like anyone would. Emma shifted her feet and heard a crunching sound. It sounded a lot like grass. Old, yellowing grass that crunched beneath your feet every time you stepped on it. Emma could also feel the long grass curling up the side of her leg, itching her skin. Her fingers longed to reach down and scratch her leg. Yeah, some more awkward sentences there, like Emma felt her face squish and make a face. I don't know what that is. It doesn't make any sense, but okay. So I have the romantic scene here, and I really don't want to read it. It is so cringy. It is so bad. I am just cringing just looking at it and reading it in my head, let alone reading it out loud. Oh God. Maybe I don't know what to do. I'll read a little bit of it, but I don't know how much I'm going to include. Okay. Suddenly, Rayson was bringing her towards him with his hand, still clutching her shoulder. Emma was too surprised to do or say anything. Rayson then began to slowly lean in towards her, and her entire face was red with something she couldn't quite place. She was completely still, unable to move or think at all, as Rayson's face became closer to her. Before she even had the chance to breathe, his lips were pressed against hers, gentle and careful, as if waiting for her response. Emma couldn't move at all, yet she felt her eyes close tight and her arms slide around him. What was going on? Suddenly, a lot of suddenlies here. Rayson's careful and steady hand holding her shoulder was now behind her head, pulling her even more towards him, and at last Emma seemed able to move again, for her arm wrapped around him began to quickly descend upwards towards his head. Oh God, I can't even read this. And then, as quickly as it had happened, it was over, and Rayson's bright green eyes were gazing back at her hazel ones, full of an expression that Emma couldn't quite place. She suddenly found herself hardly able to remember anything, and quickly racked her brain in desperation. Rayson had pulled her towards him, had kissed her, and then just like that pulled away. As if it was nothing, as if he took girls to secret places and kissed them every day. Emma stared back into the green eyes and tried to show him that she wasn't sure what to think or how to feel. Oh God. So embarrassing, so cringy, just typical 12-year-old writing, I think. So here I have an actual action scene where Rayson kills this character named Cleo, who is a member of the organization that's trying to overtake the world and hurt his family and hurt him and Emma. So he kills this man. Very dark, but I mean, it's a fantasy story. So I'm going to read this paragraph here where he uses a dagger to kill him. Shaking uncontrollably, again more adverbs, Rayson raised the dagger slightly more above his head, preparing to strike. Emotions washed like a tidal wave over his heart. Fear, agony, courage, bravery, love, hate, guilt. Ways to tell and not show. What would Emma say if he brought that dagger down? Would she say anything at all? But Rayson forced himself not to think about Emma, the one person he needed most at this moment. His knuckles were white while they gripped the blade so tightly. Rayson inhaled shakily before he glared menacingly into the eyes of the man who ruined it all for him, who was a part of the people who destroyed his entire life. His hands shook violently as he gripped the blade tighter still, feeling his knuckles tear apart in pain. Finally, after remembering that toothy grin of his, the way he knew how much he hated him with all his heart, Rayson leaned forward and thrust the dagger with all his might into the flesh of the man lying in front of him. He'd hoped he'd gotten him in the heart as the cry of searing pain came blaring from Cleo's mouth, his eyes bugging with the wound he now bore. Rayson couldn't bring his eyes away as he watched the black blood, appearing inky and darker than ever under the night sky, oozed from the man's heart, where the dagger had forced its way through the skin. I don't think it's terrible, but definitely not the greatest description. And God, all of those adverbs. I was obsessed with the frickin' adverbs. I'm gonna give it a sip of water because that was a lot for me. Wow. Well, I wanted to take this time to say that I actually am working on a book right now. I'm about halfway through it, so I'm at about, I want to say 42k words, and I want it to be somewhere around 80k to 90k words. maybe a little longer, but I think that's about where I want it to be because I'm at the midway point of the book right now. So it should be around 80-some thousand words. The book that I'm working on right now, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'll give you a very brief synopsis of what it's about. So the book that I'm writing right now is a young adult slash new adult fantasy novel. I'm not really sure which direction I'm taking it, but I think it's a little more on the YA side. But anyway, it is a young adult or new adult fantasy novel, and it is about a young woman who is visiting her estranged aunt during her winter break from college. And while she's there, she becomes close with her young cousin. And one night, her cousin disappears into this mysterious woods behind her aunt's house. And she follows her and ends up in a new world. And she is trying to save her cousin. So that is the very basic plot of it. And I don't want to go into any more detail about it just because it is still very much a work in progress, very much a first draft. Being worked on still heavily, and I just don't want to reveal too much, and I want to wait till I finish at least the first draft and I'm working on it before I say really anything else about it. But I'm definitely going to finish it. This is the farthest I have gotten with a novel project, I think, since I wrote this book. I have started so many books over the years and just have never quite gotten to the point where I'm seriously working on it until now, which is really sad to me because I used to write so much more, especially when I was younger, clearly. I don't know how I had the time with school and doing theater and everything, but somehow I did. But that is the conclusion of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I did enjoy going through my cringy writing, and you know, it's not as bad as I think it could be and some of the other things I've written from that time, but definitely a little embarrassing for sure. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out. And thank you for watching. Bye!